My dad was a huge influence on me. He was a lawyer, he's now retired, so I always wanted to follow into his footsteps and was very interested in the law. And I remember I was fascinated with this wig that sat in his bedroom drawer, and so I decided to get his briefcase, his raincoat and gown and wig and umbrella and pose in the garden, much to his delight. So my dad is from Pakistan originally. He did a degree in Pakistan, but he also qualified and trained in England, became a barrister first and then switched to become a solicitor. And so I did work experience with him, was hugely influenced by him as well, discussed all his cases, so I just found it fascinating. I grew up in Essex and went to school around Essex as well. And went to study law at Queen Mary University, which was a very proud moment for my dad because he also did a master's at Queen Mary University. Then went to the College of Law to do the legal practice course in Store Street, and then got a training contract in Maidstone, actually, in Kent. I was there for a couple of years and then went to back to London. And I then qualified in personal injury. On the 18th of March 2008, I was 29 years old and I was a solicitor. I'd been qualified for a couple of years working at Clyde & Co in the personal injury department. And I basically went to bed one day, fit, healthy, 29-year-old vegetarian, never smoked in my life. I went to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, you know, living the dream really. And went to bed, and within, I'd say, 2 or 3 hours, my legs just stopped working. No warning, no accident, no idea what had happened. I just couldn't get out of bed at all. I was completely devastated. I didn't know anybody else who had a physical disability. I didn't even knowingly know anyone who had any kind of disability. So I had a perception of what life would be like. I couldn't visualise anything. It was a very frightening time. I mean, I look back at that event now and I don't view it in the same way because I'm a completely different person. I've been through a journey, and you know, if people say you'd be where you are now, I wouldn't have believed them. So, but at that time, my confidence really hit rock bottom, and I had to take a year off work actually for rehabilitation, not learning how to walk again, but how to live being in a wheelchair, how to wash, dress myself, get around. But it's not just the physical stuff, it's actually the way people look at you. It's the way people talk to you or don't talk to you. People now say things like, do you work? Whereas before I was in a wheelchair, it's what do you do? My parents, I don't know where I'd be without them. Don't want to get emotional. But my dad found it incredibly hard emotionally. Maybe it's a typical bloke thing, dare I say it, but wanting to fix things and being a lawyer and making deals, and he couldn't fix this. He couldn't do anything about this. It wasn't in his hands. My mum was more sort of the emotional side of things. I was able to talk to her about my fears and worries. My dad was like brilliant with form filling and sorting out a blue badge. He needed to do something productive and sort of solution driven really. But combined together they make a great team because they always instilled that belief in me that I can still get back to work. Nothing's happened to my brain. You know, I've been fortunate, my physicality has changed, but I feel I've, you know, in some ways I had a lot to offer work because being in the personal injury department as well, I really understood the issues that we were dealing with and really got the medical reports on a much deeper level because I've got that lived in experience. So they never ever doubted that I could go back to work. I went back to the same firm, which was great because they obviously knew my story, which made it a lot easier and more comfortable. But I didn't go back to work full time because it's not just, you know, how you move around. Having a spinal cord injury affects lots of things. My daily regime has completely changed. So I had to come into work a little bit later, and then I worked later, so my hours were adjusted, and I built up my hours over time because at the time I was on quite heavy medication for pain. You know, my body was changing. It was so new. So I was dealing with literally a different body. And so adjustments had to be made, yeah. The worst and the most corrosive emotion in the world is people feeling pity for you. Nobody wants that. There's a difference between empathy and pity. All I wanted is people to feel empathic, to understand, but then let me lead a relatively normal life. Yes, there's been a big change in my life, but I still had the passion to work, to add value, to make a contribution. The clients were great. They, you know, when I was in hospital, they sent a card, which was really lovely because you think people are thinking of you. When I went to client events, everybody knew what had happened. They'd already, you know, informed them while I was away. So I didn't feel any sort of nervousness about seeing them because it felt totally natural, actually, and I was eased back into client sort of events. So it was handled pretty well, I'd say. Using a wheelchair does impact your confidence, your social life, because you realise that a lot of my favourite, I mean, at the time I was 29 and I was single. A lot of the bars, my favourite bars, totally inaccessible. I'm like, where do disabled people go now? Where are you supposed to have fun? I guess what changed things for me is when I met my husband. He's also a wheelchair user, actually, and a funny story, I met him in the street because he, at the time, was an actor. He still does a little bit of acting, and he had a role in Casualty, and my mum is obsessed with Casualty, and she said, oh, there's this guy and you need to watch it because he's a wheelchair user, and she Googled him. She basically Googled my future husband, saying, you know, I think this guy really is in a wheelchair. He had an accident years ago and you should watch Casualty. So, okay, begrudgingly, I watched Casualty with her. Anyway, I met him in the street, recognised him, and I said, oh, you're in Casualty. We started chatting, got to know each other, became friends for a long time, and we got married in 2016. And, you know, he was the one who showed me basically how to live like this and how to get around, and you know, he sort of, the word inspirational is so overused for disabled people, I have to say, but he was my inspiration in terms of guiding me and showing me the way and showing that another life was possible. It will be different, but it is possible. It's interesting because when a big significant life event happens, it does make you think, what am I doing? Where do I add value? What do I actually care about? Why do I even get up in the morning anymore? And for me, even though law, fantastic background, and I enjoyed it to a large extent, it wasn't really what lit me up, and I felt I could do something which would be far more me, you know, better suited to me, where I could be speaking about these various issues that I care about. So I got into the world of diversity and inclusion. What I do now is I have a training consultancy called Diverse Matters, and we give confidence to organisations to deal with diversity and inclusion issues in the workplace, particularly specialising in disability, both visible and non-visible disabilities. It involves speaking, setting up disability networks, training line managers on unconscious bias training. So it's a very fulfilling role because I still use the law as well, you know, the Equality Act, and all the knowledge that I have from that. And also I have a sense of what it's like in a law firm as well, you know, the pressure, the chargeable hours, all of that. And I have a lived-in experience of what it feels to be a disabled person working in the law as well. So I don't regret a single moment of training to be a solicitor and working in the city, because it's set me up, really.